Good morning, friends. Welcome to Coffee Talk. We are focused on quality dance education, our passion for dance, and supporting those who bring dance to the next generation. My name is Gold, and this is my co-host, Laura Giacomelli. Hello, Laura.
Hey, Ree, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How's life? What'd you do over the weekend?
What did I do over the weekend? So this weekend was our optional solo duo trio competition for our dancers, which is mostly our juniors and our senior level dancers. And this might be shocking to some people, but I actually didn't go at all. I worked at the studio on Saturday. I fit in some private lessons with some kids who weren't going to competition, who don't have specialties yet. And then Sunday, I spent the day with my son and I didn't go to competition, which I know is like probably a hot topic for some people, but I have a company director and she was there the entire time. I had a couple other choreographers who popped in, but I did not go. And they did awesome. I was very, very proud of them. My company director did great. And we have another competition, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after. And that's like with all of our groups. So I'll go to that one, but I'm trying not to go too many weekends if it's just a lot.
So let me ask you, for those that are watching, it would only be a dream to not have to go. Most of us might think, oh, the parents will be upset if I'm not there. How'd you get over that?
How did I get over that?
Yeah.
I had a child. I don't know. I think I just Cole's 3 right now, and I was always, before I even open up Libra, I was always like a big picture life kind of person. Like, what are my goals? And I've had Libra for 13 years. We're in our 13th season, and I said my goal was when I had a child, I wanted to be very selective with my time. And don't get me wrong, I still choreographed a bunch of solos, small groups, trios. Like I choreograph a lot. And my dances who were there actually were some of the top scoring routines of the weekend from the entire comp. So like I'm still very involved in the process. But just being there every single weekend, I have a mindset of just kind of managing my time. I feel like to me, I'll always have time to go to a competition. I won't always have a weekend with Cole when he's 3, when it's 60 degrees out and we can go to the playground. I don't know. That's just.
No, I think, how cool is that,
Yeah.
really, when you think about it? We maybe worry about what people will think if we take time off. Maybe we feel actually guilty if we take time off.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, we can get it together enough where I know this is going to sound weird, but get it together enough so nobody even notices you're not there.
Yeah, I think we're at a point now where this is normal. Like Miss Brittany is the company director, and Miss Brittany is there with the backup music and warming them up and running the dances. Like they still have their staple token person who is there from start to finish. So it's not like I'm leaving them high and dry and I'm setting them up with great choreography. So yeah, I think it's just the transition into that maybe was a little tricky for some people, but then other people, this is how it's always going to be, right? Because you have that flow of new kids coming in, and some kids won't even know that I used to be there for the 50-hour weekend, Friday night to Sunday night at midnight. This is a lot of people's just norms now. I think maybe just being confident enough in knowing what you want out of life as a studio owner, which I feel like is kind of like the topic of conversation today, which is interesting that this is how we're starting our opening. This wasn't planned. But yeah, that's just how I pictured my life. Like, and I worked a full day on Saturday. I taught my 4 baby classes and I had 5 private lessons and I was there until 6 o'clock on Saturday night. It's not like so I did work my weekend. I just wasn't there.
You don't have to make any excuses to me, my friend. I know you work hard. I would hope that maybe somebody who's watching this, a light bulb might go off in your head and you go, do I really have to be there 24/7?
Yeah. The answer is no.
The answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is no.
So, yes, this kind of ties in to where we're going. We have 3 guests, Kim, Deborah, and Ginette, all 3 former studio owners.
Yep.
All within the past couple or 3 years have sold their studios. I'm going to make a joke before I get to this and say that for those of you watching, and this time of the year, March, April, is when I get all these emails from dance teachers saying, can you guide me into the direction of figuring out the value of my studio? I'm overwhelmed. I can't take it. Know that the majority of those people who write me in September, I see on their social media how much they love the new season, etc.
Yeah.
So those of you that are watching, it takes a lot to actually make the decision to step away. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
So I'm excited to have this conversation, and we'll be back right after this break for that. Hello, welcome back. That was Soul and DLTC conferences for teachers, studio owners, and dancers. You can learn more at regal.com. Oh, welcome everybody.
Hello. Welcome. Hi, ladies.
I wasn't sure if there was any volume. I thought all afraid to say hello. Just give yourself a few minutes. You're not going to be afraid at all.
Yeah.
So let's tell everybody a little bit about who you are and where you come from and how long you had your school. Kim.
Hi, yeah. So I had a studio for almost 20 years outside of Houston, Texas. And I just recently sold at the end of December. And yeah, I'm excited to be here this morning with everybody.
Welcome, Kim. Deborah.
I had a studio for 35 years and I sold, it will be 3 years coming up in June is when I sold.
Where were you? Massachusetts?
Massachusetts, yeah.
Kim, you're Texas.
Texas, yes.
Okay, now we travel all the way north to Canada. Ginette.
Yes, I'm in Vaughan, Ontario, Canada, and I had my studio for 24 years up until June 2022.
Okay.
Amazing.
So before I get started with some questions for you, I want to ask our viewers to check in the comments and tell us who's watching and where you're from. And if you have any questions for our guests as we're moving along. I want to ask this first, and then I promise I'll get right into it. Kim, why'd you open a studio in the first place?
That's a loaded question, Rita, to start out with. I had always in the back of my mind wanted to do some kind of dance education. I'd started in the high school level. And then, I don't know, I just always wanted to have my own dance studio. And then, my husband and I got married really young, and I taught at high school for a couple of years, and I thought, this is something that I just really want to pursue. And my husband was super supportive and was like, if we're going to do this, let's do it now while we're young and we can afford to get in debt. So we started looking around for some places near our home, and just kind of jumped in with both feet and didn't look back.
You did eventually get out of debt, though. I want everybody.
Yeah,
to.
right? Yeah.
Deborah, why'd you open your dance studio?
I started dancing when I was 10, which is fairly late.
Yeah.
But I started when I was 3, and I cried, and my mother said, no, now you'll wait. And I had an Italian mother, so I'm not even going to go further than that. But so 10 is when she let me jump back in. And then once that happened, because I had wanted it for so long, I think by the time I was 13, I was dancing 7 days a week. So there was never a question that I was going to do something with dance for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And I feel blessed that at a young age, I thought that I could, that I didn't have to go sit in a cubicle somewhere where I was going to be unhappy. And I feel blessed that they brought me up to have the confidence to think that I could do something that I loved for work.
I love that, Deb. And the fact that I feel like too, just to kind of add on to that, it's like, how lucky are you and are we that we all got to turn our like childhood passion into a profitable business, right? Like that is not the norm. Like the norm of having your passion turn into your profit and enjoy going to work and doing that. Like, granted, we all have hard days. I'm not saying it's all, ice cream and sprinkles, but at the same time, it's like to say like that was my childhood dream and you made it happen. Like it's not many people can say that.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I also agree that there may come a time where you need change,
right?
Which we're going to get into. But Ginette, tell me, what were you thinking at the time you opened your studio? What drove you?
Very similar childhood passion. I basically was dancing before I was walking, from what I'm told. And I started walking at 9 months old. So pretty much dancing my entire life, and started taking classes when I was 3. And I knew from a very, very young age that I would either be teaching dance or opening up a studio. I knew that was going to be part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Now I'm going to ask this. What was it that made you know you were at the end?
Well, we're jumping extremes now, right?
That's why I did it. I wanted to ask you that question because I'm a guy who, if you haven't noticed, I've maneuvered into 4 or 5 different careers in my lifetime. And I want people to know that we always have the best passionate intentions and that you're not giving up if at one point you go, I want to go in a different direction. That's why I went in the order that I just went in. Kim, I don't know if I could say the question exactly like I did, but when did you know you were almost done? Like this was not what it started off to be?
I don't know that I can pinpoint just one thing. I think it was a multitude of things. I do think the pandemic had a lot to do with it, because before then I kind of had a really set kind of succession plan in my head of how I wanted things to work out and where I saw myself going. But it was like, you go through this whole survival mode. And I'm one of those that I wish I could say I could set good work boundaries, but I don't. I'm a natural born people pleaser. So I was just on my phone constantly. I was at the studio constantly. I let it affect every part of my life. I knew I only had about 5 years left with kids under my roof. I'm about to have a senior in high school, about to have a kid starting high school. So it just kind of put things in perspective of I need to take care of me and do things that fill me up now. And I think I'm able to do, just making my business profitable, selling it, and then going, look, I can do stuff that fills me up now and not other people. Because I've been pouring into other people for the last 19 years. Making those parents happy, making my staff happy, being happy all the time. And even when I wasn't happy, being that calm when there was a storm, when the pandemic happened, I was like, guys, we're going to get through this. This is going to be fine. Meanwhile, turning my computer off and sobbing to the Gold Alliance, and saying, how am I going to get through this? So I just can't pinpoint one thing, but there were a lot of things that contributed to it.
Yeah.
I actually think that was a really good answer.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be one thing. It could be years of things.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah, when did you know?
Mine was a little easier when the grandchildren came along, and my quality of life when I was surrounded by them became so much better than my quality of life when I was working at the studio. Became drastically different. Then I knew I had to make some decisions. And I feel like customer service in our industry is probably at the top of what should be important, especially after the pandemic and everyone's expectations are so high of what they're expecting from businesses and how much they're expecting when they give you this amount of money. They're expecting so much from you for this. And I think that when I was at the point where I couldn't give great customer service anymore because I just wanted to be like, do you know what I'm not spending time with, to be like, I couldn't, that wasn't their fault. And I knew it wasn't their fault. And so that's when I had to decide that my quality of life is better without it.
Mm.
Wow. I'm going to come to this next question after. Ginette, go ahead. When did you know?
I knew for a long time that I didn't want to be running a studio into my 60s. I knew at some point I wanted to sell. So I did have that in mind. I want personal freedom, and I knew I couldn't get that with the dance studio only because I was so attached to being there for the students. I was really involved because I really loved every aspect of running a studio, even the parents, like the whole thing. There were some challenging times, but I really enjoyed that. But I also wanted to have personal freedom eventually in my life. And I knew I wouldn't have that with the studio completely. Mm-hmm. And the pandemic was really difficult. Like in Canada, we were closed 14 months out of the 2 years, like mandated to be closed.
Right.
And I was burnt out. Like I was completely burnt out. I went over and above to make sure the studio was running, making it. Oh, I mean, Ree, you were on those calls.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, we did everything. I had a drive-in recital. I had everything. I did everything. Most of it I was doing it myself because I couldn't afford to pay people to do things, but I wanted to make sure things happened. I even drove to every kid's home and videotaped them on their lawn so that we can put a finale dance together. We just did so much. And I started having panic attacks, and it was really affecting my health. And so it was either I keep doing that to build it up again, or I find something else to do.
Mm.
Laura, I've been taking all the time in this.
No, you're fine. I'm taking it in too, Ray, because I feel like this is such a amazing conversation, because even as someone who's not planning on like selling her business anytime soon, that is the goal, right? Like you want to create a profitable business. to then be able to sell it later on. So I think my question to go around the table would be, what would you guys suggest to get, what would you suggest to business owners, studios owners, to get their business to a place where in 20 years and 35 years, and you know what I mean? Like we could be at a place where we could sell our businesses. What would you suggest, Kim? Like, what did you do? Like, what did you do to get it there?
I think, well, for me, it was the succession planning first, of finding out, do my kids actually want to take this from me? And the answer for them, even though they're young, we're like, no, they have other aspirations, they want to do in life. And then it was pinpointing that staff member who I knew had the same heart in it as I did. And I was just lucky enough that I have a staff member who had been with me since I opened. And we share the same values, the same things. And I kept telling myself, if she's not willing to buy it from me, then I will hang on to it as long as I can, because I just didn't want to pass it on to anybody. I just didn't want to sell it to, anyone that was willing to purchase it. It needed to be someone who recognized the importance of it and what we were doing, and the goals and the culture of the studio needed to be the same, because when I'm gone, kind of like I feel like Anne and Christy are doing with their studio, and Susie, they have the studio in Canada, that they've created that legacy, and it still goes on. And as much as it won't be my studio anymore, I want it to still be somewhat of a legacy when I'm gone. Yeah. So that was kind of like my whole purpose and plan. And I just making it profitable so it looks good on the books. And, I think Sean Deaver said, make sure you're paying the taxes, even though you want it, everyone's trying to get it to where it breaks even so you don't have to pay taxes. You're going to have to do that in order for your business to look profitable to somebody. And get multiple valuations. Don't just get one if you feel like it's not profitable.
Yeah. You're very lucky, Kim, that you had someone on staff, since that one of your core values of selling was that you wanted to have that legacy and the same morals, and, you wanted that to follow through with the next owner. So I feel like you're very lucky to have that person in-house, because I know people who don't necessarily, they look around and maybe people on staff are not in none of them are in a financial situation where they could purchase a studio, and or don't have the same work ethic. It's one thing to be a dance teacher. It's another thing to be a studio owner. It's a totally different hat we put on. And being able to run a business and make those hard decisions is not easy. And not all dance teachers can do that, right? It's hard being the one who's the leader. And you just said it too before, going through COVID, it was hard to put on that happy, we're going to figure it out face, right? Like, I feel like we all did it. But at the same time, like I know I would close my computer and cry and be like, oh my God, how am I going to make this happen? Like, this can't fail. Like, I can't fail. So I totally understand that. Deb, how about you? What are some of your suggestions?
I'm always going to come from a place of business.
Yeah.
As much as I know we're super emotional driven people. And I think that's probably why Ree gets the calls he gets in April. And then that changes like the wind in September. We're very emotionally driven people, and that's what we do. Right. That's why our pieces are how they, that's why they look like what they look like, because it comes from within and it comes from such a passion. I say from a business point of view, because it's a business, I say treat it as if you were going to sell it as a franchise. So they walk in and there are some policies and procedures that they can follow, because I felt the same way as Kim. I wanted my legacy to live on, but I have to tell you, 3 years later, if it doesn't, it doesn't. I know that I ran it to the best of my ability while I owned it. I hope that it runs successfully, but it's not mine anymore. So the vision is not mine anymore. It's someone else's. And I have to respect whatever her vision is for the studio. And then it will become her legacy, because it's a what? Let's all say it together. It's a business. It's not like I, sent one of my kids out to be adopted and now I have to fight. It's not, it's a business. And I can't emotionally connect myself to a business because then that's what takes everything out of us. And that's like Ginette, the anxiety, because then it affects your health, right? Because now I'm connected in such a way that the outcome of this business is going to dictate my feelings. And that's why I sold. So that doesn't happen anymore. Right. So, but again, I didn't come to that conclusion immediately. That, that was something I had to get to. But yeah, 3 years later, it'll be what it'll be. It's someone else's legacy now.
Yeah, I feel like too. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I will say Deb gave me the best advice when I came to her and said, I think I'm going to sell. She said, all right, can you sit back and watch it burn? And I was like, ooh.
I mean, and I didn't say that because of any, it wasn't going to burn.
She didn't mean it in a bad way. She just wanted me to think about it, think about it, because it could happen, And so that really did, I had to sit in it for a minute. Okay, can I do that?
Yeah,
the thing about you, Deborah, is you don't hold back, my friend. You just let it roll.
But do you think though, Ree, and this is for everybody, when other business owners are selling businesses,
bingo,
they're not, it's like, we're artists and we're attached to it. We're the pieces I created for this weekend are feelings that I have or things going on in the world. So there is this deep emotional connection to this business, right? So, but again, I think what Deb's saying, when you take off that artist hat and you put on that business owner hat, you have to.
We can't be ego driven. We can't be ego driven. It's a business decision and we have to be okay with either way what happens.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we didn't sell it. We didn't sell it emotionally. We just sold it monetarily.
Right.
Right. And the emotion is the part we're trying to get back. Right. Because for ourselves, we need to conserve that for our family and our friends and who we decide that we want to put that into now, whatever we want to put it into now. And so if I kept it there, then I didn't do what I was setting out to do.
Yeah.
Comments, Ginette?
Yeah.
Well, I totally get what Kim was saying, because when I was working on an exit strategy back in 2016, when I met with a business consultant, there was a list of questions that he asked, and one of them was, do you want it to be a legacy? Do you care if the people who buy it change the name? Do make changes? And I was like, oh no, I want it to be a legacy. I was so, and it's so funny because it completely shifted, just like Deborah said, and it just became, no, this is a business. And as much as I cared for it, it is a business. And so I did put, strategies in place, like she said, processes in place, so that if anybody off the street would walk in, they could start running the studio and it would all be done. So I started working on that for a couple of years before I decided to go. And I always feel like we need to prepare for impact, because we never know when impact will hit. And so back 12 years ago, I did that. I prepared for impact. I started a side gig business, which I grew alongside my studio. And so when I was ready to leave the studio, I had this other thing that I had already started, which was already bringing in income, which was already set, so that I could easily just transition from the studio to something else. And that was super helpful too for me to make that decision, because of the emotional attachment that we all have, because we put so much heart into our work. Those kids meant the world to me, the business, the entire thing. So we just put so much into it that it's really hard to detach from that. But if you put something else in place, or you already start to work towards something else, what are you going to do when you sell the business, right? If you don't have anything else, then it might be a little bit more difficult to make that decision. But when you do, then it's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Just because I know this from our early talk before we came on the air. you talked about the stress. Can you tell the audience what your rent was when the pandemic hit? You were closed for 14 months. When we talk stress, this is a great.
Yeah, my rent at that time was $22,000 a month, and give or take some change. And then it went up to $24,000 by the time I ended up closing. So yeah, talk about stress. Now, I want to say the Canadian government did help some small businesses in a sense, where I did get a little bit of money from them, and was super helpful, obviously, at the time, but it didn't make me any income. Like, I didn't gain any income from it. It would just help pay some of the stress of the rent while we were closed.
Yeah. So when we were having our Canadian town halls and I was working with IDEA members from Canada, one of the most frustrating things was the inability to do anything that would help or change the situation, because it all had to do with the government closing everyone down, and there were no exceptions. And we lost a couple of really successful members from Canada during that time because they could not hang on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now, Ginette, I have to ask this question because everybody's wondering now that you brought it up. What is that side business? I'm going to go to all of you for a second. I want to know what your experience has made you good at. Ginette.
Oh, my side business is with Arbonne International. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It's a health and wellness business, and it's basically an e-commerce business. So people can shop like they do on Amazon, get the product shipped to their home. The company is certified vegan, and all the products are clean and pure. And so it was something that I felt passionate about as well. And I grew that business to a place where I could leave my studio. And also on the side, I had a real estate business. Whoops. I also had a real estate business at the time too. And so it just made it easier to transition to closing the studio. But yeah, that business is I love it. Like, I absolutely love it. It has brought so much into my life.
Do you think that dance and the experiences of it brought you to the place where you're really good at that?
Yeah, and vice versa, because I started that business 12 years ago. So all the personal growth and development that I learned through that business, through my Arbonne business, I was implementing into my studio business.
I got it.
And I was a better person because of it too. I know that stress, sometimes we get so overwhelmed. I know I was nasty at times. I like running the studio. I know that, like, and not because I wanted to. And that really hurt me because I knew that wasn't me. But Arbonne is really big on personal growth and development. We read a lot of books. They teach you how to run a business, which was really helpful as well to implement into the studio business. So helpful.
You're smart, my friend. Good for you. Deborah, I happen to know that you've become a real estate tycoon. Am I right?
I'm not a real estate tycoon. No, I you keep saying that. I wish I had the money. You think I
Deb.
No, I sold the building the year before I sold the business. Nice. I don't know if you know that, but yeah. And only because my business was in a building, it was 11,000 square feet in a building of 44,000 square feet. It was a condo. And so the guys that owned the other 3/4 of the building wanted to sell, and the person buying, of course, wanted the whole thing. And so that just happened. We said, make an offer, and we could not refuse the offer. And so that's why I sold the building before, but I knew that I was selling the business which most people wouldn't have done, right? Because the business sometimes is worth really with the building, right? But it was too good of an offer, and so that allowed us then to buy a rental company.
What?
So
Ooh. What's that noise?
sounds like a faucet.
It does.
Definitely a faucet.
Whatever it was, it
Who's
went
making
away.
tea? So then we bought the rental property, and then, in all honesty, every day, like something comes across my proverbial desk that I think I might want to try that. So there's a lot of things in the pipeline, and probably because I really, really like to work. But I like to do a bunch of different things because my ADHD won't let me focus on any one thing. So I find it better if I don't get bored if I'm doing a whole mess of things. Like that's what we just bought 15 acres in Maine, which we're going to put some stuff on that, with my son and one of his friends. So just things come along, and
Very cool.
Yeah, you're living life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like just choose it. Just doing what we choose. I'm also very, very, very blessed that my husband has a really good job and allows me to kind of do whatever, because he knows happy wife, happy life, right? So, but he really does allow me to do whatever I want.
So, Kim, I know you're fresh at this, but one of the things I was thinking earlier, but I didn't say it, now I feel like I want to, was you carried everybody through, you smiled, you said we're going to make it, and how difficult that was. So, but you kept the smile the whole time. So is the thing you're enjoying the most right now is being grumpy and
Right.
You know, I was thinking about that the other day because I was watching
You
something.
can't be grumpy. Look at
and I
her.
was just like bawling
This is
my eyes
character.
out. And I had an employee once. I hope she's watching. She's not. We're still really good friends. She used to always tell me I was dead inside because.
Oh
And it
my
was kind
God.
of like a running
You
joke.
didn't think that was a problem?
It was kind of a running joke because anything that would happen, I would just not react to it because I was waiting to see like how everyone else was going to react so that
Yep.
And so it was kind of like a running joke, and I still joke with her. I'm like, remember, I'm dead inside. But now I find myself super emotional. I think it's like from all those years of kind of just being that duck on the surface.
Yes.
I will find myself crying at the silliest things, and I'm like, maybe it's hormones, or maybe I just haven't done this in 19 years.
Maybe you're just allowing yourself to feel now, right?
Yeah, I mean it. But for the most part, it's just I never wanted to cause concern.
Sure.
Like when there was something going on within the studio, whether it was like, a mass exodus of parents leaving, or, it was something, I was always like, guys, we're going to, I always had a game plan. I wanted a solution. If you came with me in a problem, I had a solution. And, after a while, you're just, when you're not needed anymore and you kind of have this sense of release, I think it just all starts to come forward.
So expect one full year of emotional, you can't figure it out why.
Yes. Absolutely. I was emotional for the first 6 months, like really emotional. And it took a while to adjust.
Okay.
Well, don't you feel that? I feel like it kind of comes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Like it's a part of you. How do I say this? It's like a part of your identity, right? Like Deb was saying, like how it's not about you. You have to put your business hat on, but I know I call Libra, like Libra's my first baby and Cole was the second baby I birthed. And it's like, no, Cole's really my first baby and only baby. That was my first business that I started. Right. But you have like this, I don't know, when you're a business owner, especially when you're dealing with, maybe because we're dealing with people's children and we're so invested in them and we watch them grow from like these little babies, like what other business watches someone's child grow and is a part of their village from when they're this big until they're going off to college, right? There really isn't many other businesses that get to be a part of people's villages like we are, right? So it's like we have this emotional connection to these children to the point where it's like it's a part of our identity. So I feel like we also, and this is something that I'm learning more so now, it's like that separation, right? That setting those boundaries, like Kim was talking about, like having those boundaries of, like, me just this weekend, like I didn't go to competition on Sunday because I was already away from Cole for 10 hours on Saturday. And now I know that I have this today and I have teaching tonight, and I don't want to go 3 days without seeing my own child. Right. So it's kind of like pulling yourself out of that. I'm a dance studio owner and then I'm all these other things. Like, no. Sometimes you have to rearrange,
right? Priority
where
shift.
those things fall, you know?
Priority shift in your life, and you have to work with that.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think I envied people that had an 8 to 5 job and then at 5 p.m. shut it off. Like they were done for the day. They went on and moved about their life from 5 p.m. till bedtime. And I was like, what is this like?
What is that? What that would feel
what
like.
Is that? Yeah. What does that feel like? And for me, I think there's just a little bit of like I guess it's just my personality. As much as I tried to set boundaries and say, hey, don't call me after 9 p.m. and hey, don't text me and whatever, I was still returning emails at 11:30 p.m. and I was still laying awake at night because a parent, even though I had a ton of students, that one parent upset me. And so I think if you're a new studio owner, if you're just starting a studio, really set hard boundaries and stick to them. Because I think I waited way too long to try and do it, to be honest. I mean, I had already had staff that was so reliant on me being on 24/7 that it was just hard to break the habit of like.
And that says a lot, Kim, because I feel like you were always the queen of systems and processes.
I know. I do love a good process. I just didn't set my own personal boundary.
Yeah, because I remember you being like pulling out your like binder of that thick of like every single, like how you open the studio, how you close the studio, how you. I'm like I gotta get my act together because I don't have a binder like that with everything. You know what I mean? Like that was when I first met you years ago. You had all of that, and I was like, wow, this girl has it together. You know, but you're right. I think it's different. You're like you said, the systems and processes is one thing, but being able to be like, here's my boundary. That's a totally different, different thing to put into place for sure.
I'd love to see if anybody who's watching has thoughts on what we're discussing or is considering at least beginning to think about succession planning. So I'm going to throw something else into this mix. I was recently talking to a studio owner and I said, you should put systems in place and get it together so your business can be turnkey. Mm-hmm. She said this to me and I was like, wow, I hadn't thought about that, but it stuck with me. She's like, I'm going till I drop.
It's a choice, yeah.
I have made that decision. I said, so I'm not telling you not to go till you drop. Yeah. I'm telling you to figure out what happens when you drop. But there are many people who look at it and go, I never want to give this up. And I want those who are watching who may feel that way, go for it. I have a mother that I don't think would have ever given it up. Yeah. I don't think I would ever give up what I do. I do think, though, what I would do is narrow it down to a lesser responsibility place. Yep. But I just wanted to make that point. It isn't like everyone's ultimate goal is to sell and retire and move on. This is because it's emotional, because it comes from the heart. There are some people who can't imagine life without it.
And I would like to add to that because I feel like I'm a little bit maybe of that person. I'm starting to change. I think being around smart business owners like Idea, Gold Alliance, putting yourself in rooms where you learn more things. What are your options? Because that's like we're talking about. These are all different options for you later on. One thing I always, before I opened up Libra, I was working at a dance studio and she approached me because she wanted to retire. And she came at me with a number and we were deep in conversation. And when the number came to my accountant said, no, that number's too high. And I said, how much high? He says, hundreds of thousands of dollars too high. You're not buying that. As your accountant, it's a bad business move for your future. So I remember I went back to her, and it was like awkward because I was teaching at her dance studio. It's a weird situation. I was young. I was like 23, 24. And I went back to her and I said, your numbers are not matching up with your actual profit of the dance studio and what you're asking for it. And she said to me, but this is my retirement. And I remember I like sat in it for a minute, and initially I was like, oh, I feel bad for you. And then I said to myself, but this is your future, Laura. So you need to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. So I remember, years later, I opened up my studio, and I remember saying to myself, like, when you sell your business, that will not be your retirement. That will be your cherry on top for your retirement. You need to figure out right now, just like every other corporate business sets up retirement funds. So like once that business was profitable, of course, then COVID hit. And I was like, well, I'm not doing retirement now. Like I had to get through COVID and do all of that. But like once the business was good again, got myself a financial advisor. And I was like, I need to set myself up for retirement because I want to retire at 55. I'm 38 right now. Like, what do I need to do to get myself in that position? And like, that's where I'm at right now. So I think business owners and studio owners need to think that way. Think of if you want to sell your business, that shouldn't just be it. We should be smarter in that way to say this amount per month should be going into investment, or I should be buying real estate, or should I be, you know what I'm saying? Like, because I remember leaving that meeting feeling bad for her, but also saying to myself, don't ever put yourself in that situation, Laura. You have an opportunity to build something and have that sweat equity of building it. Have that, right? Like put all that extra money, you know what I mean? Like just pretend you don't even have it, just like most corporate people do. Like you should be doing that. Because I just always kept thinking to myself, like whatever I sell, if I sell or if I don't, but that's just extra. That can't be the be all end all, right? So that's just something I feel like we should bring up too. Just, we should be thinking in that way. We should be thinking bigger for ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with you, Laura. And I do think like what we said earlier, when it becomes March and April and you are like in the throes of everything, competition season, recital. I mean, spring is so busy right now. For me, I had to sit down and remember all the things that the business had brought me financially, because I always thought, when you're working 900 hours a week, you would sit there and go, oh my gosh, I'm not making enough in a year to justify all these hours I'm working. Mm-hmm. But then when you have to look back and say, no, like, maybe, like when my daughter turned 16, I was able to buy her a car and write a check for it. Those things you have to like sit back and like really remind yourself. Like I was able to help my husband and buy it. We bought a brand new house, or we bought a car. You have to remind yourself why you're doing it. And it can't be just because of the kids or the family. You have to remind like that sweat equity for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, this was so interesting. That was a little, I don't know what that was. It's interesting for me to have this conversation because I'm always working with people who want to grow their business or have a better, more organized business. Mm-hmm. To actually listen to those who have created those businesses, but who have also moved on is really interesting to me. I feel like the three of you could almost accomplish anything you want to do because you have the backgrounds that you do. I once knew this studio owner. I believe her studio was in Little Rock, Arkansas. See if I remember. Sheila Vaught was her name. And she went from owning a studio to a wedding planner, and she's the best wedding planner around.
Oh yeah. We learn so much running a studio. Like you work in every department. We can run any business, really. I feel very confident walking into any business, and they can put me in any department and I would make, it would be successful.
Yeah.
What do we have? About 11, 12 income streams alone in the studio business. Yeah.
It's funny because my husband would always say, when I was, thinking about it, and I'd go, but what am I going to do? This is all I've ever done. Like where can I go? Like, it would be like, somebody who writes software programs being out of the software world for 10 years, which is you're out. Right. So what am I going to do? And he would say, Deb, you could walk into any business and do so many things because you've had to do, because unlike other businesses, because we didn't have people doing it for us, especially in the beginning, we had to learn to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that also tenacity and stick-to-itiveness is also not seen in a lot of companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where somebody goes in and it's a little hard and they go, I'm going to try something else. But we are like, we can't admit defeat. So couple those two things together, right? You're invaluable to somebody. Plus, in touching with what Laura said, when you work with other studio owners that are great business people, I think a big part of confidence to do what you want, or to make Cole your chief focus, right? You have to have the confidence to do that. And I feel like one of the only ways to have that confidence is to be so well educated that you're not second guessing yourself. So I think the education and the learning process, keep doing it, which will then give you the confidence to make the decisions that you need to make for your life. I feel like so many studio owners are sticking in their studios because they don't think that they can do anything else. But then on the other side of that, I also say, don't ever in April and May make those permanent decisions on those temporary feelings.
Yes.
Right? Yeah,
Yes,
those are temporary feelings. Yeah.
I'm hoping this coffee talk makes people think before they write
Absolutely.
that letter.
Absolutely.
I run conferences, and 2 weeks before the conferences, I go, can I do this anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Then I get to the conference and it's like, wow, I can't wait till next year.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between these two making these life decisions.
Yeah.
Yes. And they are life decisions. They're emotional, they're financial.
Mm-hmm.
They are life decisions. Yeah.
I kept thinking once I put it out in the universe, there's no, take backsies. I had to know for sure that if I was going to speak it out and say I was ready to sell, I had to be 100% committed, because there's no going back. I wasn't going to be like, just kidding, So I wanted to make sure that I was 100% in it, because I didn't want to like rethink it, or I had to be ready. So it was like when I spoke it out of my mouth, I was like, whoa.
But I also think people need to know that even if you're going to sell your business, there are still ways to stay in this world.
Yes.
And help other people. That's another thing I've started, is I'm helping another studio owner get her confidence level up and her education on the things that you can do with your business to make it more successful. And that feels good, because there was 6 months ago that I called another studio owner and I said, I'm bored out of my mind. I'm just bored out of my mind because my mind is not going 100 miles an hour. And this was the way that I could feel like I was making a difference, still making a difference, because I do believe in this world, and I do believe we affect a lot of kids. And I think that's so important. And I didn't want to step out entirely. So I think there are other ways to stay here if this is where you love.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So I think it's not an all or nothing. And I think people have to know it's not an all or nothing.
Yeah. You can do choreography. You can assist other studio owners, like you're saying. You can go on the management side of it.
Yeah.
Like there's so many. You can go into judging. Like that's one thing about the dance field. It's like when you are in the dance field, it like branches out like tree branches there, but it's all going back to the same roots for the passion and love of our field. So there's so many options after, selling your studio to still stay in this field for sure.
Awesome. You guys, I don't know if this is a topic that's ever been covered before. I certainly haven't. Before we get done, I want to just respond to this. And is it Angie? Yes, Angie, if you're still on, I want to say, I'm looking at that. Oh, I have a comment. I have a comment here that we will not be posting online. Obviously, I'll just tell you, it's from Dr. Sexy. It's awful to do an inside joke. Okay, so Angie, I want to say to you, there has to come a time when you turn those emails and that cell phone off.
Yep.
You have to start doing it. You have to say to yourself, I have worked 7 days. It's Monday. I need to get my life together this morning, and I'm not going on electronics for 4 hours. It's so important. It's so important for us to understand that we need the nourishment that we're willing to give everybody else, or the time off that we're willing to give everyone else, or we're willing to give to our family who needs us. It has to be as important to take care of ourselves.
Yep.
So bottom line here is, Angie, take your life back, create boundaries.
Because you deserve it, Angie. You deserve it.
Yeah.
And schedule it in. I used to schedule 30 minutes or an hour every day or every other day, where I would just delegate to emails, responding to emails. And then I would have my studio manager answer the other ones. But I would just schedule it in. That way, that's it. That's the time that I'm doing it. And then tomorrow is the next day. So I'll respond to the email tomorrow if I can't get to it today. So that helped out a lot too.
24/7 never built a business. Just saying that. It can't be done, because you will arrive at that burnout stage.
Yeah.
I just want to say hello to Joanne Shepherd Jeb. Well, she's here as Joanne Jeb. I've known her pretty much my whole life. And good to see you, Joanne. Okay, everybody. Thank you for being with us. Take some time to figure out, what is your strategy for the future? You want to stay, and as I said, until you drop? Or do you want to think about, maybe I want to see about transitioning into a new way? And what will make me the happiest? Because that's what it's all about. The main point of this conversation is that the students stay with you for a certain period of time. Your family and your life goals are with you for life. Make sure you fulfill them all. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm looking at this comment over here. Deborah, this Dr. Sexy likes you, my friend. Thank you, doctor.
Because he hasn't met me, that's why.
I've never had this happen before. It's obviously some kind of scam. Thank you all for being with us. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Laura, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.